I stepped out of the taxi in my pressed Air Force uniform, my duffel bag heavy in my hand, carrying the weight of 17 years of silence. Before I could cross the gravel driveway to the house I once called home in Bozeman, Montana, my sister Claire was already on her phone, dialing the police. The late October air was crisp, thick with the scent of pine needles and damp soil, clinging to my skin like a warning. I paused at the wooden gate that guarded the property, a place that had once been my refuge. A security camera whirred above, tilting as if it didn't know me. I waited for the gate to unlatch, for any sign of recognition. Nothing came. I pressed the intercom, its buzz sharp in the quiet. I tried again. "Claire," I said, my voice rough from years of disuse. "It's me, Anna." The front door creaked open. Claire emerged in a tailored wool coat and crisp jeans, every inch the estate's self-appointed guardian. She stood on the porch, phone to her ear, her eyes narrowing as if I were a stranger. "I'm calling the cops," she said coldly. "There's a trespasser claiming to be family." The words hit like a shockwave, stealing my breath. "Claire, what the hell are you doing?" I said, my voice cracking. "This is my home." "Not anymore, Anna," she snapped. "You've been gone 17 years. You don't get to show up in that uniform and demand a handout." I gripped my duffel tighter, the canvas biting into my palm. "I just got discharged. I wanted to see Mom, maybe Dad." She scoffed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You should have thought of them before vanishing. We've moved on. You're not in the will. You're not on the deed." Her words cut deeper than any mission debrief I'd faced in my career. "I grew up here," I said quietly, pointing to the tall cedar tree brushing the attic window. "I broke my arm falling from that tree when I was 10. I carved my initials into the porch railing. This house is part of me." Claire's jaw clenched, her eyes like flint. "You always made everything about you. A uniform doesn't give you the right to barge in and expect a hero's welcome." A police SUV rolled up the street, its blue lights flashing but siren off, moving with agonizing slowness. My stomach twisted, a familiar knot from my early deployments. Two officers stepped out, one grizzled with deep lines etched in his face, the other barely 22, his badge gleaming like a new toy. The older one paused, squinting at me. "Anna Reed? Major Air Force Intelligence, retired." I nodded, swallowing hard. "This is my parents' house." The younger officer glanced at Claire, who stood with her arms crossed, smug and triumphant. "The property is registered to Claire Thompson and Michael Reed. There's no record of Anna Reed having ownership or residency rights." My mouth opened then closed, words failing me. "Michael Reed. My father's still here." Claire's face was stone, unyielding. "He moved in after selling our old place in Helena. This was Grandpa's house. I renovated it, all legal." "I don't care about legal," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This was home." The older officer cleared his throat, his tone firm but not unkind. "Ma'am, unless you have documentation proving this is your residence, we need you to leave the premises." My hand shook as I fumbled for my discharge papers, knowing they were useless here. I stepped back, my boots crunching against the gravel curb. I didn't cry when I lost my top-secret clearance or when I nearly died in a field hospital in Kuwait, but I cried now. The place that had shaped my childhood, my memories, refused to acknowledge me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I grabbed it with numb fingers. A text from my mother, no name, just a number. "Go back to base, Anna. There's nothing for you here." I let the phone slip from my hand, clattering to the ground. Through the blur of tears, I saw my father's silhouette in the living room window, seated, unmoving, refusing to even glance my way. That night, I slept in my car, parked a block away, staring at the dark outline of the house that should have been mine. By morning, a for sale sign was staked in the front yard, its bold letters mocking me like a slap. Sleep was impossible. Every rustle of leaves, every flicker of a streetlight, every memory tied to that house kept me awake, my heart pounding with a rhythm I hadn't felt since my first missions. This was supposed to be my safe haven, my inheritance, my anchor after years of service. Now it was a battlefield, and I was an outsider in my own story. The next morning I dragged myself to a small coffee shop in downtown Bozeman, my eyes bloodshot, my uniform creased from a night in the car. My old college friend Jessica Lane was waiting, dressed in a sharp blazer and skirt, A stark contrast to my faded fatigues and the exhaustion carved into my face. We hadn't spoken since undergrad, but she looked at me with a warmth that nearly broke me. "I saw the listing this morning," she said, skipping pleasantries and sliding her tablet across the table. There it was, my home listed under Pine Ridge LLC. I stared at the screen, the address searing into my eyes like a brand. Jessica handed me a printout. 3 months ago, a property transfer was recorded. Your name's on the seller line. The signature wasn't mine. That's forged, I said flatly, a cold pressure building behind my eyes. I never signed anything related to this house. She nodded grimly. The notary's license was revoked last year for falsifying records. I'll subpoena him. I shook my head in disbelief. They sold their house in Helena, moved here, and now they're laundering through mine. Jessica's brows arched. What? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. 3 months ago they said they needed a fresh start. Claire claimed it made sense to consolidate family assets. Mom went on about how sentimental this house was, Grandpa's house. I didn't think they meant stealing it. Jessica nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing. They're likely using Pine Ridge LLC as a shell to avoid legal exposure. I bet your sister's husband, David, is involved. My stomach lurched. David's in global supply chain management. Jessica pointed to a note in her file. City records show a spike in power usage at the property, like industrial refrigeration or heavy equipment, but no permits for renovations or commercial activity. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. An email from my mother. Anna, this isn't betrayal. It's practicality. You were never here. We were. Love, Mom. The words hit like a knife, justifying theft with cold indifference. I need to get inside that house, I murmured, my voice low but resolute. Not just to take it back. I need to know what they're hiding. Jessica hesitated, her eyes searching mine. If they're doing something illegal, this could get dangerous, Anna. I met her gaze, unflinching. I'm not walking away. She nodded once, her expression hardening. I'll start with the forensic document analyst and file an injunction to freeze the title. But you need to be careful. People who forge deeds don't stop at legal lines. That evening I parked a block away, watching the house from the shadows. The air was chilly, heavy with the scent of impending rain. At 11:20 p.m., I noticed a man lingering near a street lamp across the street, his face half hidden by a hood. He didn't look at me, but he left a slip of paper under my windshield wiper, pressed flat like a warning. I waited until he was gone, then grabbed it with trembling hands. The note read, "If you're the real Anna, meet me at the alley behind the old lumber mill midnight. Come alone." My pulse quickened, but I didn't hesitate. I drove to the alley, a shadowed stretch behind the house's converted storage shed, once my grandfather's workshop. A man stepped into the dim light, mid-40s, weathered face, ex-Marine by his stance. His name was Ethan, a local mechanic who'd lived nearby for years. "They say you're unstable from combat," he said, his voice low and urgent, his eyes scanning the darkness. "But I've seen David's men unloading crates from unmarked vans at night. No plates, gloved hands, in and out fast." My fingers tightened around the small recorder hidden in my jacket pocket. I remembered David's words at my grandfather's funeral 4 years ago, his voice dripping with condescension. "Stick to war zones, Major. This isn't your world anymore." The memory burned. "What's in the crates?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Ethan shook his head. "Don't know. But David's there every week, silent as a ghost, never talks to neighbors." I nodded, my mind racing. The alley was too quiet. No cameras, no eyes, just the hum of distant traffic. I thanked him and left, my recorder still running, capturing every word. At 1 a.m. I returned alone, dressed in black, a tiny camera clipped to my collar, the recorder angled toward a rusted vent near the shed. The low rumble of engines broke the silence. 2 black vans pulled up, headlights off, their tires crunching softly on the gravel. I held my breath, crouching behind a chain-link fence. 4 men stepped out, one armed, another with a clipboard, and then David, his gait confident, like this was just another night's work. He pointed to the shed's rear door, and the men unloaded boxes with practiced efficiency, their movements silent, gloved hands moving in the moonlight. Jessica was right, this wasn't just squatting. It was organized, precise like a military op. Then I heard a voice through the vent, sharp and unmistakable. "If that soldier girl keeps digging, cut her loose." No warning. My father's voice, low and deliberate, with that Montana drawl I hadn't heard in years. My throat tightened, my hands shaking as I steadied the recorder. I replayed it in my head to be sure, the phrasing, the cold intent. I hadn't heard him speak to me directly in over a decade, and now he was plotting my erasure. I slipped back to my car, clutching the recorder like it might burn through my palm. I played the audio again, scrubbing it carefully, listening for every syllable. His voice stood out amid the muffled others. "Cut her loose." By morning I returned to the vent, my heart pounding, only to find the recorder gone. Someone had been there. Someone new. Panic surged, bitter and metallic, flooding my gut. My cover was slipping, and I had to move fast before the window slammed shut. I drove to a diner on the edge of Bozeman to regroup, my heart hammering, my coffee growing cold in my shaking hands. My phone buzzed, an unknown number with a chilling message. "You're playing with fire, Anna. I have your military psych eval. Want to see what it says?" The threat sent a shiver down my spine. I hadn't seen my psych evaluation since my discharge, but I knew it could be manipulated to paint me as unstable, a broken soldier unfit to challenge them. I needed to act before they tightened the noose. That afternoon, I met my father in a deserted parking lot by the Gallatin River. He stood by his weathered pickup, his coat zipped tight, his eyes avoiding mine, the wind carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. "You've changed," he said, his voice flat like he was reading a script. "Not for the better." I stood 2 steps away, my boots planted firm. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "You served 17 years, he said, his gaze fixed on the river, "and came back a stranger." "I want the truth about the house," I said, my words sharp. "You witnessed Grandpa's will. My name was on it." He shifted uncomfortably, his hands buried in his pockets. "That document was outdated. Things changed. Enough to forge my signature and hide it under a shell company?" I pressed, stepping closer, my eyes locked on his. "I have audio. You said to cut me loose if I found out." His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing, but he wouldn't meet my gaze. "We're protecting the family legacy," he said, his voice low and defensive. "Claire's built something respected. You're sleeping in a car." "You sold my home," I said, my voice cutting through the wind. "You're ashamed of me." He stepped back, adjusting his collar as if brushing off guilt. "You're not one of us anymore." The words landed like a physical blow, heavy and final. He walked to his truck, where a man I recognized from the vans waited, short, silent, wearing a silver watch that glinted in the fading light. They drove off without a word, leaving me standing alone in the rain, soaked through my uniform, my soul heavier than my duffel bag. The drizzle turned to a downpour, each drop stinging like a reminder of the betrayal. Back in my car, I found an envelope wedged under my windshield wiper. A plain manila sleeve sealed with tape, as if it were meant to be a secret. I got inside, turned on the dome light, and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photocopy of my grandfather's original will, my name listed as the sole heir to the house, dated 10 years ago, unaltered, with his unmistakable signature. A handwritten note was stapled to the top. "I notarized this document that day. I know they falsified it later. RL." My heart pounded, the paper shaking in my hands. This was proof, the first crack in their carefully constructed narrative. I snapped a photo and texted it to Jessica with a single line. "This changes everything." I drove to my rented room, a sparse studio with a single chair, a bare mattress and no curtains, lit only by the blue glow of my laptop. I opened a file from Ryan, an old Air Force intelligence contact who'd stayed in touch after my discharge. Pine Ridge LLC had been flagged in a 2015 counterintelligence probe for laundering money through fake contracts for military-grade equipment, radios, body armor, drone parts. The case was sealed by higher-ups with no convictions, but David's name appeared as a logistics consultant. Another document from Jessica showed $450,000 transferred to Claire's personal account over 16 months, each transaction signed off by my father as property supervisor. I ran Pine Ridge through Ryan's secure intel portal, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The tags were damning. Suspected fraud. Classified contractor cover. Domestic asset misappropriation. Ryan messaged. If you move on this, they'll hit back hard. You sure you're ready? I replied without hesitation. I'm not just fighting for a house. I'm exposing what they've done and who they're hurting. I called Jessica, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I have the contracts, the bank routing, the lease agreements. The forged signature matches a tax form from 2015, notarized by someone whose license lapsed in 2018. I verified it. Jessica was silent for a moment, then said, We file for fraud, criminal conspiracy, title tampering, and possibly racketeering if the Pine Ridge connections hold. This is bigger than we thought, Anna. For the first time since returning, I felt grounded, not consumed by anger or broken by betrayal, but focused like I was back in a command center analyzing threats. They erased me, I said, my voice low but resolute. But I found them in crime files, in signatures they didn't bother to hide. My inbox pinged. An anonymous email leak from Pine Ridge LLC, forwarded from an undisclosed address. The subject line read, Urgent. The message was chilling. She's connecting dots. Clean house by the 22nd. Locked down accounts. I read it 3 times, my pulse racing. They knew I was closing in. They were scrambling, trying to erase their tracks before I could expose them. I forwarded the email to Jessica, my hand steady now. They're panicking, I said. Good. Let them. The next morning, Jessica and I stood at the counter in Bozeman City Hall, the air thick with tension. The clerk tapped her keyboard, her eyes flicking across the screen nervously. This deed is active, she said, almost too casually. Jessica didn't flinch. That's exactly why we're here. We're filing a petition for an immediate injunction on all transfers based on compelling evidence of forgery and fraud. I slid forward the folder Jessica had prepared. A meticulous stack of documents detailing signature inconsistencies, the disgraced notary's record, suspicious bank trails, and at the top, the verified original will from my grandfather. The clerk's eyes widened as she scanned the pages, her fingers hesitating over the keyboard. Major Anna Reed, retired, I said softly, my voice steady. I grew up in that house. It's mine. By noon, we had a stamped confirmation. The land office had enacted a temporary hold on all transactions related to the property pending a full investigation. It wasn't a victory, but it was a foothold. A line drawn in the Montana dirt. A signal that I wasn't backing down. We drove to the house, pulling into the driveway where Claire's sleek BMW and David's rugged truck sat like sentinels. Jessica handed me the injunction envelope, her eyes meeting mine. We do this together, she said. I rang the doorbell, my heart steady despite the weight of the moment. Claire answered, her polished smile faltering when she saw my uniform, then Jessica standing beside me. This is a court injunction, Jessica said, her voice crisp as she handed over the envelope. Effective immediately. All property transfers, leases, or modifications are suspended. You've been notified. Claire's hands trembled as she took the papers, her knuckles white. This is absurd, she hissed, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. You're not the owner, Anna. You can't do this. David appeared behind her, his presence looming, his voice low and oily. You're making a big mistake, Anna. You don't know who you're up against. I met his gaze, unflinching. I spent 17 years auditing Pentagon contracts. I've seen men like you bluff, threaten, and fold under pressure. His eyes flickered, a flash of fear there and gone. Claire sputtered. This is harassment. Jessica cut in, her tone sharp. Fraud is a felony, Miss Thompson. Claire's lawyer, hovering in the background, muttered about a family misunderstanding. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. A misunderstanding doesn't involve stolen credentials, falsified signatures, and federal contracts. We turned and left, the door slamming behind us, the sound echoing like a gavel in my mind. Jessica glanced at me in the car. They'll hit back, Anna. Are you ready? I nodded, my jaw tight. I've got tools they can't imagine, digital forensics, metadata, and favors from people who owe me. They underestimated me from the start. Back in my apartment, the soft hum of my laptop filled the silence as I pored over digital trails, the counter buried under a chaotic sprawl of documents, bank statements, metadata logs, encrypted files. The glow of the screen illuminated my face, casting shadows on the bare walls of the studio. I joined a secure Zoom call with Ryan and Mia, a hacker who kept her background blurred and her voice modulated to avoid tracing. "I got your packet," Mia said without preamble, her fingers already tapping. "Encrypted tight, but let's see what these liars left behind." I uploaded a zip file of PDFs, screenshots, and a suspicious wire transfer receipt I'd found in the leaked email. Mia whistled softly. "Someone's been busy laundering money. I'll follow the IP." I nodded, my voice steady. "That's all I need." She ran scripts, her screen flickering as she parsed headers, her fingers moving like a conductor's. Ryan leaned closer to the camera, his Air Force cap tilted slightly. "I ran the company name you sent, Pine Ridge LLC. You're not going to like this." He uploaded a redacted report from a 2015 DoD internal archive. Pine Ridge bid on a contract for satellite gear and body armor. They submitted forged compliance reports. The case was sealed when someone upstairs pulled strings. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. "Let me guess, no convictions, no penalties." "Correct," Ryan said. "But guess who's listed on the board of directors? David T. Brooks." I froze. Claire had always insisted David save the family from financial ruin, rebuilding Dad's failing logistics business. Now I knew how, through dirty money and my stolen identity. Mia interrupted, her voice sharp. "I isolated a digital signature from that transfer receipt. Their VPN isn't clean, there's a DNS leak. The IP traces back to a residential modem in Bozeman, registered to Claire Thompson." A chill crawled up my spine. "So they're funneling money through the house." "Exactly," Mia said. "And get this, one of the purchase orders routed through Pine Ridge matches a lot number for drone batteries we flagged during your deployment in Afghanistan." My mind flashed back to that case. Missing equipment, buried audits, whispers of a cover-up. "I want every login, every transaction they touched," I said, my voice low but resolute. "This isn't just fraud. It's military-grade misappropriation." Ryan nodded. "I'll pull DoD procurement cross-references. This could trigger a federal review if it hits the right ears." Mia's screen flickered, her voice tightening. "Anna, your inbox was accessed at 10:45 p.m. from an unfamiliar device. Someone's trying to cover their tracks, and you just lit up their radar." A cease and desist letter from Pine Ridge LLC arrived the next morning, its sterile envelope screaming desperation. I didn't bother opening it. I'd already mailed my report to the DoD Inspector General. Copies of bank transfers, forged deeds, metadata chains, audio transcripts, and a sworn affidavit detailing how my identity was used to secure restricted contracts. Each page was numbered, watermarked, and bound by the discipline of a soldier trained to build airtight cases. The automated reply came that evening. "Your report has been received and assigned a preliminary review officer. Follow-up will be communicated via secure channel." I read it 3 times, letting the words settle into my bones. This was no longer whispers in shadows or family secrets. It was federal now. Jessica called as I scanned the reply. "They'll want a full comparison of Claire's income versus the wire transfers," she said. "Can you get that from Mia?" "Already asked," I replied. "She's pulling last year's IRS statements and cross-referencing them with flagged transfers from shell companies. We'll need a subpoena soon." "Let me handle that," Jessica said. "Just make sure nothing happens to you in the meantime." I smiled grimly. They'd have to try harder than a letter. I later learned from Jessica, who heard it from a courthouse clerk, that Claire had unraveled when she learned about the federal submission. She'd shown up at Jessica's office unannounced, her polished facade gone, her voice shrill. "You think this will help her?" she'd hissed. "Anna's going to drag us all down, including her own father." Jessica stayed calm, handing her a copy of the cease and desist letter I'd received. "Intimidating a federal whistleblower is a felony," she said quietly. Claire stormed out, throwing one last threat. "This isn't over." But it was just beginning. That night, Jessica brought 2 folders to my apartment, bank summaries for Claire and David. The numbers were staggering. Claire's declared salary as a nonprofit director didn't come close to the $400,000 in deposits over 14 months. David had 3 transfers from a shell account linked to Peak Dynamics, his firm, all timed with the forged deed. "They moved fast," I said, shaking my head. This wasn't desperation, it was coordinated. Jessica nodded. They underestimated you. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unknown number. Played it on speaker. It was Claire, her voice shaky, uneven. Anna, please, let's meet. Just talk. This doesn't have to go further. We're still family. I ended the message before it finished. I'm not here to talk, I told Jessica. I'm here to shut them down. In the Helena U.S. Attorney's office, I met Prosecutor Daniel Kim. Your evidence warrants a formal criminal inquiry, he said, his handshake firm but not performative. The forged deeds, bank transfers, surveillance footage, and fraudulent contracts tied to Pine Ridge and Peak Dynamics pointed to Claire, David, and my father. They used my clearance to access federal bidding processes, I said, my voice controlled like I was briefing a mission. They used my grandfather's house as a waypoint for their scheme, Jessica added. Michael Reed served as a proxy on property transfers to mass conflicts of interest, qualifying as conspiracy to defraud. Kim opened a leather binder. We're issuing federal subpoenas for David Brooks, Claire Thompson, and Michael Reed. They'll testify in a closed preliminary hearing 3 weeks from today. I leaned forward. I want to remain anonymous until then. No leaks to media or local authorities. They've already tried to intimidate me. Kim nodded. We'll flag your testimony under protective status, but once charges are filed, anonymity isn't guaranteed. That's fine, I said. By then, I'll be the one speaking out loud. Outside, the Montana sky was gray, the air heavy with the promise of snow, a calm before the storm. That afternoon, I waited with Jessica in the lobby of Claire's nonprofit foundation. The subpoena was to be delivered in person. Claire walked in, her heels clicking, a too bright smile for the receptionist, until she saw us. A U.S. Marshal stepped forward, handing her the envelope. You are summoned under federal subpoena for alleged participation in conspiracy and fraud, he said. The receptionist gasped. Phones froze mid-scroll and Claire's smile shattered. Her hand trembled as she took the papers, her eyes scanning the lobby. For a moment I thought she saw me, but I was behind mirrored glass, watching her empire begin to crumble. Later that night, Jessica and I stepped out of the federal building after finalizing the paperwork. The air smelled of wet pavement and pine, tension thick as fog. I've rarely seen a case turn this fast, Jessica murmured. They know they're exposed. Good, I said. They should be afraid. As we reached the parking garage, I slowed. A black sedan sat idling across the street, windows tinted, no license plate visible. It lingered just long enough to be noticed, then pulled away. The courtroom was cold, white lights glaring overhead, steel benches humming as I shifted. I stood behind the witness table, right hand raised, the oath catching in my throat like gravel. I didn't shake, but I remembered the day my grandfather handed me the house keys. The day I came home to find my name erased. The night I heard my father's voice plotting my erasure. Now I stood here, not as the daughter they disowned, but as a decorated major, an intelligence analyst with a clearance history, and a plaintiff backed by federal prosecution. The prosecutor began. Ms. Reed, describe what was done to your property. I met his eyes, then turned to the judge. They forged my signature on a deed transferring my ancestral home. They altered bank records, funneled money through offshore accounts disguised as nonprofit funds, and used my military clearance to apply for contracts they had no legal access to. He nodded, presenting evidence. A photograph of the forged deed, IP logs me a trace to Claire's network, audio of my father's voice arranging late-night deliveries, bank transfers to Claire's account, and a contract with my clearance codes and David's signature. Explain the $250,000 to Peak Dynamics, Mr. Reed. The prosecutor asked my father. Silence. He stared at the floor, then at Claire, then at me, but I wasn't his daughter now. I was a federal witness. This wasn't just a house, I said. It was about power, control, and silencing someone they thought wouldn't return. The judge recessed for a full trial in 4 weeks. Veterans nodded support outside. Claire deleted my photos from family accounts, but I'd archived everything. In my apartment, my external drive held 8 years of files, contracts, emails, surveillance stills. A video showed my grandfather in his study. This house is Anna's. She'll keep it safe. Mia confirmed metadata tied to Claire's IP. An email leak from Pine Ridge read, If Anna talks, we lose freedom. Move fast. The trial was moved up due to flight risk. David was cut from Peak Dynamics amid media leaks. Claire claimed manipulation by David and my father. My father smashed a desk in rage, caught on camera. A letter from my mother's friend Ellen read, "I knew they altered the will. I'm sorry I stayed silent. The court froze their assets, homes, accounts gone. Outside," my father begged. "Don't destroy us." "You did that," I said. My mother whispered, "If I'd chosen differently, you wouldn't hurt." I walked away. The courtroom was silent for the verdict. Claire 4 years, David 6, Michael 8, no parole. Veterans greeted me outside. One said, "We're not forgotten." I replied, "Not while we stand." At the Air Force Library, my name was etched on a dedication wall. Major Anna Reed, Intelligence, 2008 to 2025. Duty honor. I stood tall, eyes misted but clear. They erased my name, but my truth stood unshaken. Justice came not in vengeance but in courage, refusing to be silenced.